Welcome once again to SoCo Chat, a podcast where we hear directly from county leaders, discuss the latest news, and talk about all things concerning our beautiful corner of California known as Sonoma County. Well, welcome back to SoCo Chat. I'm your host, once again, Paul Gullickson, Communications Manager for the County of Sonoma, and we thank you all for joining us. We have the privilege of having with us today Supervisor Susan Gorin, who has represented the 1st District on the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors for the past 12 years. Supervisor Gorin decided early on that she would not be running for re-election to a 4th term, but would instead be retiring at the end of this month. So we are very honored to have her here today to look back on the many highs and perhaps a few lows of her time in office. Supervisor Gorin, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me back. This is great.
Well, you've been one of our most loyal guests, and we really appreciate you taking time. I'm not going to say this is your last time visiting with us because you know the invitation's always there.
But I may come back.
we look forward to talking to you some more. Before we dive into the conversation with Supervisor Gorin, I want to start with our trivia question. As always, this is going to be tied into our conversation today. Our question is, where did Supervisor Gorin go to college? And I'll give you a hint. If you listen in by the end of this segment, you're going to get the answer that you're looking for. But if you know the answer already, call us at 707-565-2242 or email us at publicaffairs, that's one word, publicaffairs at sonoma-county.org. And if you're correct, you'll get a chance to win one of our SoCo Chat coffee mugs or water flasks or your pick. So with that, let's get on with our discussion. Welcome, Supervisor Gorin.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, let's first recap, okay? You and I have known each other for a long time.
For a long time.
Yeah. And I want to say your experience as an elected official dates back 28 years to when you were first elected to the Santa Rosa School Board in 1996. And that's where you and I met for the first time. And then it was 10 years after that, you were elected to the Santa Rosa City Council in 2006, if I have my dates right.
You do.
And after that, you decided to make a run for the District 1 seat on the Board of Supervisors and won that for the first time in 2012. I'm exhausted just talking about that. So let me ask you, what do you think now as you look back on all those years in public service? You've served at so many different levels. What feelings come to mind now as you're nearing your retirement?
Well, interestingly enough, I call myself the accidental supervisor. I never intended to be an elected official. In fact, my father was rather cynical about government, so it's amazing that I am where I am. But my message to anybody in the community: keep your friends close, and they are the best people to give you advice. They're the best people to mentor you and suggest when opportunities arise. And I did have some good friends along the way who encouraged me to consider elective office. And of course, I said, oh, yeah, right. But then the opportunity arose when a friend of mine on the school board suggested that I run for the school board. And I was a busy mother with parents finishing up school at Sonoma State, and the opportunity was there. I said, this is appealing. I know a lot about the schools, and maybe I can add my voice as a parent volunteer, someone who's been active in the schools. And I ran against really incredible folks like Bill Carl, Hugh Futrell, Jane Zills, and just stellar individuals. And I was stunned when I won that first election, not really knowing how to run for election, by 59 votes. So my message is every vote does count. And people still remember when I walked to their door, knocking on their door, asking for their vote. Walking, phoning, being available is always part of the election process. But the very first conversation needs to be with your family and your partner, significant
Make sure they're
other.
on board.
Make sure they're on board. And just have to give credit to my engineer husband, who's been very, very supportive along the way, except maybe for the last election.
He wasn't as enthusiastic about that one.
He was not. Yeah. And of course, we recall when we lost our home in the fire in 2017, he said, well, you cannot run for re-election because our campaign signs are
all
gone.
the signs are gone.
Oh, well, we replaced those.
Well, they say, Sonoma County's a county of 500,000 people, but it's still a small town. And those retail politics, knocking on doors, still matter here, right?
Absolutely. And keep the name and contact information for just about everybody that you meet. You never know when they're going to come in handy, and put them in a database at some point.
Yeah, not a Rolodex, but
Not
a
a
database.
Boy.
Does anybody have any of those
I
anymore?
actually started out with a Rolodex. Oh man, that changed rapidly. So it's connections. It's connections to people. It's connections to the issues that you've been involved in and the organizations you're involved in. That is the key to the success that I've experienced over the years. And I look back fondly to my years as a school board trustee, council member, mayor, and now supervisor. And there are instances where there are issues that every single one of the knowledge basis data points come in handy, especially now as we're talking about school district consolidation. We were talking about that 20 something years ago.
Yeah.
So it don't forget anything. It does come in handy.
Well, and also, you've had a lot of experience at the school board level, at the city council level, municipal level, and then you went into the county supervisorial role. What was that transition like? Did that experience help you in building that? And do you still feel that the connections that with the people and with the residents of your district?
In every office I've held, there are ups and downs, very controversial issues. I've served as mayor of Santa Rosa during the deepest, broadest recession in the city's history.
Yeah.
And any agenda item that I had specifically about green building standards or other things just went on the back burner. And I spent my time answering hundreds and thousands of constituent emails, the concerns about keeping services available. And so I poured my heart and soul into the mayor with very little help from the city manager's office because we didn't have staff there. And it was a brutal campaign for reelection. And I knew shortly thereafter that after my term ended, I was going to fade into retirement.
But it didn't happen that way.
But 2 years later, good friends of mine from both Sonoma Valley and Santa Rosa took me out to lunch. And they said, former Supervisor Valerie Brown is going to retire. We want you to run. We will help you to run. We will help you get elected. And those are the good friends that you really need. And so once again, the conversation with my husband, I never was interested in aiming towards Sacramento or Washington. That was not my goal. I love to be able to sit down and have these conversations or meet people in coffee shops or my home to really understand the issues, tours, rather than spending my time in cars. So did the political calculus, and it was a hotly contested race of 6 pretty qualified folks. And yet I won that election. And I sort of thought I would win it with the political calculus, but that was a very tough race. It was with a lot of independent expenditures, some nasty cartoons.
Oh, right.
And yet I was successful. And I think I feel proud about winning over the support of Sonoma Valley. They were unsure about the Santa Rosa girl being able to represent them.
Right.
And the reality is, with the unincorporated areas around the city of Sonoma, I spent 95% of my time working on issues in the unincorporated areas and with the city of Sonoma. So the city of Santa Rosa was well represented by the council. And even though it was more than half of my district, my staff, now 4 members of my great team, my D1 team, started off with 1, and I spent all of our time pretty much in Sonoma Valley or working, sadly, with folks who lost their home in the fires and concerns about their roads and flooding and those kind of issues. So up and down, and with the redistricting, my district shifted eastward so that more of Santa Rosa became absorbed
Yeah.
into my district.
Well, just to remind our listeners, your District 1 stretches from the southern border in the town of Sonoma all the way up Sonoma Valley into Santa Rosa. And as you mentioned, your district actually expanded with the latest redistricting, but you still kept a strong focus and remembering the people in your district in the Sonoma, the Springs area. That area is still near and dear to you, right?
Absolutely. People don't recognize how large the district is, especially when they advocate for repaving of the roads. My
Right.
district extends from the Napa border up to Petrified Forest, down to Pengrove, and then it used to be Farmers Lane,
Right.
but now it is all the way to Memorial Hospital.
Yeah,
So
it's
I've been
amazing.
involved in Memorial Hospital issues. And it is a diverse community, and we recognize how vulnerable they have emerged with the fires, and two fires
Mhm.
significantly affecting the first district. The first, of course, was 2017, and it just bristles me a little bit when I remember the after action report for the 2017 fires. There was one sentence in there saying, "Oh, and there were fires in Sonoma Valley."
Oh, geez.
Really?
Forget about the Nuns fire a little bit. Yeah.
Supervisor lost her home. One
Yeah.
sentence wasn't worthy of a comment.
Yeah.
And
I
there were some
remember.
challenges, and then the glass fire. And I think those are the challenges that we have. West County really experienced flooding, but the first district, two fires dead on.
Yeah.
And of course, the COVID pandemic just really set us back. But I look at the silver linings from COVID in that we now have platforms to communicate so easily with constituents through Zoom or go-to meetings. So I spent a lot of time working out of my home, which is nice now that I got my house rebuilt.
Yeah. Well, let's remind listeners of this. I mean, obviously, you have already highlighted that your time in public service has been through some real ups and downs. You can talk about the recession of 2007. We also have wildfires 2017, Nuns Fire, Glass Fire in 2020, then followed at the same time, overlapping with the global pandemic. And you were right in the middle of all that. You're also right in the middle of all of those challenges. You're in Oakmont. You lost your home in 2017. So how did that experience affect you and how you helped govern your district? I mean, certainly you had an empathy with what the other people who lost their homes and understood what they were going through. Yeah.
There were important lessons learned in those fires, and those fires were the Sonoma complex fires.
Right.
They extended north up in the Pocket Fire. Certainly everyone thinks about the Tubbs Fire, and fewer individuals think about the fact that the fires kept roiling through
Right.
Sonoma Valley for another week and a half until the rains came.
Right.
And so many people lost homes in the fire in Sonoma Valley. Although my district was spread out, I really thank my incredible staff for working with hundreds of families who lost their homes in the fire, grieving with them, bringing in hope counselors to help them respond, understand the debris cleanup process and the challenges with insurance, lack of insurance. And of course, those fires were part of the PG&E Fire Victims Trust and lawsuit. And so we were experienced when the glass fire came through, and we organized the neighborhood again to come together, understand the resource and recovery places, and the value of a district newsletter as information. We worked with the neighborhood captains to establish communication groups with the neighborhoods so that they knew what was going on,
Sure.
even though they, of course, were not living in the ashes of their homes. They were spread across hither and yon, but we were able to communicate with them and let them know about important issues coming before the county. I think that was one of the highlights. It's bittersweet,
Sure.
of course,
Sure.
but I felt like I really made a contribution, both in understanding the complexity of how CAL FIRE responds to fires, along with the volunteer and professional fire companies, but also how normal folks go through the grieving process when they're finally allowed on into the ashes of their home. And I warn them that it's both toxic materials in
Yeah.
there, but and so wear protective clothing. But then the enormity of the loss hits them
Yeah.
dead on
Yeah.
when nothing, relatively nothing, has survived the fires.
Yeah.
I was amused to discover the firefighters putting on the foundation walls
Mm.
little china cups, my very cheap china that I purchased when we first were married. I said, that had to survive? Really?
Yeah. Couldn't that go?
Couldn't that go?
Well, like you said, the impacts, you keep feeling them. I mean, you and I were talking before we came on the air that we were talking about old Christmas photos, and you noted that they're all gone for you. You'd have they were all
My
in
childhood photos are
yeah.
gone. I have a
How
few
heartbreaking.
that were rescued, that were retrieved from my mother-in-law and my sister and brother, but for the most part, they were gone. And it's just memories
Yeah.
of the blurry black and white photos
But they still mean something, you know.
with the ridiculous perms in my hair.
Well, so as you look back on those experiences, do you feel, I mean, obviously you've gone through a lot. You've helped the county improve in how we can be better ready for these kinds of events in the future. Do you feel like we're in a better place and
I
you've
think
made an impact
we
there?
certainly are better prepared. And as a result of the fires, the numerous fires, we have fire safe councils working on a community wildfire protection plan,
Mm-hmm.
and they have evacuation plans, they have evacuation exercises, and the incredible amount of funding that we put in from the PG&E settlement funds for chipper programs and for
Vegetation.
defensible space. And it seems like Fire Safe Sonoma is out there talking about home hardening and defensible space. And so I think we can credit, and yes, I did lose the home in Oakmont, and at a town hall, I said, get rid of the junipers. And they embraced that. They had a whole campaign of junk the junipers, and it's going pretty well.
Yeah.
But you can never be prepared enough
Yeah.
for when a fire comes and you are given the warning that you need to get out now.
Yeah.
And then you experience the gridlock in the neighborhood roads. Certainly, it took me an hour and a half to get out of Oakmont during the glass fire. And I'm disappointed, actually, that the county has not funded, the board did not agree to fund an evacuation analysis of Los Gulicos.
Mm.
We have many folks on the campus who are vulnerable, and plans to increase the number of homeless individuals on that campus
Mm-hmm.
within locked facilities. And living right across the street from it, I'm very concerned that that campus is not prepared for a major fire that we experienced a couple of times over.
Yeah.
And in fact, that campus has experienced fires running through the campus.
Yeah.
And Oakmont across the street evacuation, I think, was delayed because they were waiting for the evacuation of Los Gulicos.
Yeah.
That is an important conversation point in the next year as the future board evaluates the HANA project and the Sonoma Developmental Center
Right. Those
project.
are big things. Yeah.
Fire evacuation is front and center in everybody's mind.
Right.
We are still experiencing the trauma from the flames and the loss of the homes and the gridlock on the streets.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned that we have not learned those lessons about the capacity to build and develop in a safe way to make sure that everyone is safe during evacuation.
Yeah. Well, you've been a strong voice for that, and your district is certainly vulnerable, as we know. There's really only one way in and one way out along Sonoma Valley, and you know, your voice has been a key part of trying to raise awareness about the importance of evacuation plans.
And there were two issues driving me in making the decision to run for the third term. Obviously, I was dealing with the loss of the home, but it was the analysis and the approval of the Sonoma Developmental Project, and which is still moving
up in the
forward. It's
air.
been litigated,
Yeah.
and Now we have an even larger project being proposed, which saddens me greatly. But the other part of it was my experience in losing a home and helping hundreds of families navigate through the grief and cleanup process and rebuilding process.
Yeah.
It is so heartening to read on Facebook and to drive through the neighborhoods when I do see the homes being rebuilt and families moving in.
Yeah. Well, obviously, rebuilding has occurred, and in many regards, it's been remarkable how much rebuilding occurred and quickly, and how much the county has grown from this experience and has improved its methods of communications and response in so many ways. And so has CAL FIRE and so many of our agencies.
But I also think we have to note that, as per the last census, we've lost a lot of folks, not to the tragedy of fires, but they simply cannot afford to live here and they've moved away, or they have trauma from the fires and they've moved away. And that makes me really sad, but it was predictable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, obviously, housing is going to be a big issue going forward. Well, let's look back on your career a little bit and say what have been some of the highlights of your time on the Board of Supervisors. You mentioned some of the communications improvements as you've helped make there in the first district in particular. What else comes to mind for you?
Well, I really need to thank my incredible staff. As I mentioned before, I started off with one district director, and then the fires happened. I was able to hire another administrative assistant, and recognizing the complexity and the needs of the Springs, essentially, and the growth of our Spanish-speaking community,
Right.
we've been able to add 2 more bilingual folks to our staff. And sadly, I think they are looking for new jobs. Some of them have found new jobs. That is part of the vagaries of a new supervisor coming into office.
Right.
And so I'm helping them to find those new jobs because they have incredible skills.
Yes.
Hello out
We
there.
know.
You need to come to me. You should hire them. And so that is really heartening. The needs of the district have been recognized, and I have a great team working on answering the phone and answering email and staffing 2 municipal advisory councils.
Yeah.
That happened after the second election, when I recognized and the community recognized that we needed a better communication, not sort of a neighborhood level of government, to be the voice, the eyes and ears of the community. Even though I was a great supervisor, I cannot be everywhere.
Yes.
It just gave me great pleasure to recognize that I started the conversation regarding the formation of the municipal advisory councils, and we now have them in District 5 and District 4, and certainly 2 of them in District 1. We started out, we were the first one. Thank you, former Supervisor Michael Kale, for starting the Community Advisory Council. It's been renamed, and we have representatives from all over the Sonoma Valley reviewing development plans in Sonoma Valley. But we know we needed other bodies, other mechanisms for planning and getting the insight that they have about priorities of roads, priorities for mental health services. And I'm so ever grateful to those amazing volunteers on all 3 of those bodies for working so hard to represent the community. And of course, I have 3 staff members staffing those bodies.
Yeah. Well, and you're always looking for people, to serve on those boards, right?
So that's a success story. The other success story is I started even before the fires, recognizing that there needed to be a front door for the county in Sonoma Valley. It was a long way between Santa Rosa and Sonoma Valley. People were having difficulty accessing services. They should be able to just walk in a front door to get the services that they need. And another silver lining for COVID, a building became available several years ago when it was vacated by a staffing agency. And we negotiated with the owner, and we now have about 2/3 of that building housing eligibility workers from Human Services, Child Support Services, WIC program, mental health services, and certainly I have an office and my staff have offices. So we are reconfiguring that. Hopefully we'll have that reconfigured early next year, but we're installing technical equipment to move the Springs Mac into the conference room. So it's very close to the community, and they can just pop in.
Well, again, the goal here is to bring services more directly to the people and not rely on people to have to drive all the way to Santa Rosa or Airport Boulevard to get services. And more often than not, you have to do that during the day. People work, they are in school. It's harder to do that.
People don't recognize that it takes about an hour to drive from Sonoma Valley to the county complex, and that if the roads are cooperating and the trees are not coming down and congestion or bridges not being replaced, and by the airport, and we're moving a number of our services up to the airport, which concerns me greatly. That's another 20 minutes or half an hour away for anyone in Sonoma Valley.
Yeah. So you've been a strong advocate for making these services more available to the people in the valley, and I'm sure the residents appreciate that.
The other fun factoid that my colleagues razz me about is the Arnold Drive bike lanes.
Well, I have one here that my next question is, what is the thing that you wished you had completed before you, and that was a softball, because I have a feeling I know your answer on this one.
I felt that they were going to find me if I mentioned Arnold Drive bike lanes one more time. But it took me about 10 or 11 years. Interestingly, I met with a group of cyclists, I think my first year as a supervisor, talking about how unsafe Arnold Drive was for cyclists. And of course, pedestrians would not.
Yeah, there's no place to walk.
And the traffic was pretty fast moving, and portions of it are 45 miles per hour. And I'm a recreational cyclist, and I started bicycling down there. My husband and I would take our tandem down there and have lunch at the Happy Dog, which is now closed, sadly. And I knew that I needed to widen those roads. It seems simple in the eyes of constituents. You just need to widen that shoulder a foot or two. Just put a little bit more asphalt on there.
It doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work that way. So I found the funding through Measure M, and thank you, Valerie Brown, for starting the bike lanes. But she gave up because of the trees. Neighbors were very concerned about trees coming down. But now we have the feasibility study, we have the design engineering, we have a consultant on board, and the final approval that I was able to make was the approval of the environmental impact report for the length of 2 half-mile sections.
Hey, it's a start. It's a start.
Not a lot, but and trees will have to come down, and they're now in the process of acquiring right away. At least I hope they are. And supposedly the bike lanes will be completed next year after my term. But it's been 10 or 11 long years of slogging through county bureaucracy and making amazing discoveries that one department, Transportation Public Works, manages bike lanes or shoulders, repaving roads, and another, Regional Parks, manages the development and implementation of a lineal park multi-use path. So that's what I've been announcing to folks. The feasibility analysis for the Sonoma Valley 13-mile Sonoma Valley multi-use path was done probably 8 to 10 years ago. And thank you, Regional Parks, Steve, Eric, Ken Tam, for working section by section on evaluating where the right-of-way is for Caltrans. They don't even know. They have to have the surveyors come out. So I'm going to be working on that. We have too many people dying on cycles, bicycles, and pedestrians on Highway 12. And that's the commitment that I'm making in retirement. Similar to the Napa Vine Trail, theirs is easier than ours will be.
Well, unfortunately, some of these projects are very iterative. They take a long time. You build on what Valerie Brown started, and somebody's going to build on what you did. And eventually those lanes, I'm confident, will be built. Because I want to use them too.
And really, and David Guin, the city manager for Sonoma, said, if I had that, I'd be bicycling to work. So hope springs eternal, and maybe we will still be young enough to ride a bike when a section of it is completed. And I think that gives me pleasure in knowing that it started. I pushed to make that happen through 2 or 3 department directors. And now I pushed the board to approve the hiring of an engineer, road engineer, to work on the active transportation plan and get more of these projects planned
Moving
and
along.
implemented and funded.
Yeah.
So I think that that is a good start to a legacy. I'm not there yet. I'll still be probably in the board chamber advocating this board to fund some more projects, but that's where I am.
Well, I'm sure you'll be a voice for all those causes have been a real passion for you. What are your thoughts on the importance of community outreach and specifically to the Spanish speaking residents of your district and how you've increased efforts for your district and beyond?
It is really wonderful that the county is finally recognizing that we have a responsibility to outreach to those speaking many diverse languages in the county. Certainly, I recognize that the Springs area is a community in need. Sadly, I think the county doesn't recognize that through data for various reasons. We knew, especially during COVID,
yeah.
that I needed to really be an advocate for these communities. We were so far away from Santa Rosa. We were not receiving the services on testing and vaccinations. And so we had every step of the way, we had to advocate for places to set up mobile vans and do the testing, even in parking lots.
Right.
But we also recognize that we needed better communication for our community. So we started publishing my district newsletter in English and Spanish.
Good.
That was important. As we increased staff, we made it a priority to have 2 or 3 folks who were fluently bilingual, who could communicate with the community. But also during COVID, an exceptional staff member, Karina Garcia.
Oh, we know well.
We know well. She came up with the idea of having a charla comunitaria. And so she planned and brought everybody on board. She outreached, she planned the topics, and it was put out on Facebook Live and advertised, and a wide viewership, not just from the first district, but all over the county.
Yeah.
We knew that this was absolutely critical and essential that we outreach in native languages to provide the information on
Directly.
mental health, emergency preparedness, certainly COVID testing and vaccines. And it's spectacularly successful. And I believe we're not holding it nearly as often as we did during COVID, but I believe it's still ongoing. And thank you to the communications team for supporting that effort.
Yeah. Well, I will say on that note, it was a very successful effort, and we're looking at bringing that back in 2025 to have that program in particular.
Don't wait until the next fire or pandemic.
Yeah. Well said. Do you have any advice for your successor, Rebecca Hermosillo, who's will be succeeding you in District 1 Supervisor?
Well, she has not served as an elected official before, so she has a learning curve, but she is charming and very, very knowledgeable, and she will work well with this board. I jokingly say that she needs to sharpen her elbows to do some jousting. She's convinced she doesn't need to do that, so I'll check in with her in about 6 months or a year and see if that's the case, to get the district priorities funded. But she will be terrific. And to have our first Latina elected as a supervisor is truly amazing.
Yeah.
And she grew up in Sonoma Valley, and she is well known and loved by many. So she will be very, very successful. But there are a number of projects that are left undone, including the Springs Community Plaza, another
project that's in the works.
Another project where I met my match through the county bureaucracy. We're creating a temporary community plaza with picnic tables and trees in boxes and lights and chalkboards and fun things to do on the ground.
Yeah.
But it's not truly the community plaza. We've had funds escrowed for that. So it'll take a year or two to get through the process. And I hope that will be very exciting, and she can take credit for the completion of that.
Well, as we said, you've you've placed a great importance on community outreach, specifically to our Spanish-speaking communities, bringing them into the process, recognizing their needs,
Right.
and that's one of the projects that's really reflected that. So
we still have a few folks saying, "Why are you doing this?
yeah,
It makes no sense.
yeah,
Pave our roads instead." Oh
yeah.
no, this community needs a gathering place, and I'm so thrilled that most of the project will be completed by December 7th,
Mhm.
which is our winter celebration where Santa Claus comes to town.
Well, that'll be exciting.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I can't be there, but I know I have staff who will be there, and we're excited for that. But any other final thoughts about you want to leave with listeners?
It's I- as I've been going through files and binders and getting rid of a lot of stuff, I happened to look through the vacation rental binder, which was about 3 inches
Oh
thick,
my goodness.
starting in 2012 with reports on vacation rentals. And again, this is something that former Supervisor Valerie Brown started with our first vacation rental ordinance. And I think it's been modified at my urging and now other supervisors' urging 4 or 5 times,
Hmm.
and creating vacation rental exclusion zones over a lot of our housing stock. It's so that we can have our neighborhoods be neighborhoods
Right.
and workforce housing and not hotel zones.
Yeah.
So that gives me a lot of pleasure that I was able to be the very squeaky wheel in making that
And
happen.
protecting those neighborhoods. Wow. That's certainly part of your legacy as well. So, and it's been extensive. Well, Supervisor Gorin, thank you for being with us. Thank you for taking us down memory lane here. And it's been an honor working with you and calling you a friend for all of these years. So,
Thank you.
as a thank you for being our guest, we have a special package of SoCo Chat
Nice.
swag for you.
I love it.
We also have some flowers for you as
Thank you.
on behalf of the communications team. You've been one of our most loyal guests on our podcast. You really helped us get off on a good start this year, and we thank you for that.
Well, invite me back when the Sonoma Developmental Center comes before the board. I will speak my mind.
Well, you're not retiring your passions. We know that, and we appreciate that. I want to say, actually, we never got to my one little nugget I wanted to ask you. So I know you're a product. You've been an elected official in our community for a long time. Where did you go to college? You started at where? Boston?
I actually did. My father was unemployed in the steel industry, so going to college right out of high school was not going to be in my cards. So I was working right out of high school. But when my husband and I married too young, way too young, yes, we're still married, and we moved to Boston while he was finishing school, and I started going to Metropolitan College, which was Boston University. And I've continued to nurture the passion to actually go through college to completion. And
Mhm.
when we moved to Santa Rosa, there was the beautiful Santa Rosa Junior College just
Perfect.
waiting for
Yeah.
me. I could bicycle there. Even
Mm.
then, parking was challenging. So I graduated from SRJC, and then I would have loved to have gone on to Berkeley, but
Yeah.
with children at home,
Yeah.
entered Sonoma State University in, of all things, political
Oh
science
my
and
goodness.
economics.
What a great place for that, right?
I'm practicing
And you got a
my
double
education.
major. You got a double major,
A major and a minor,
a major and minor, and political science and economics.
and a incredible dynamic duo.
Yeah.
I would encourage anybody going through political science to also take economics courses.
It definitely helps when it
Yes.
comes budget time.
Yes.
Well, you are a true product of our higher education system, our local higher education system, and it's amazing the experience you've gained at each level along the way, and our community has benefited from that. So,
Well, and it's
so
been
thank
my
you.
pleasure to work in the community as a community volunteer with many organizations. You don't have to go through my biography to know that the real passion is in my heart for community organizations and for our communities.
Well, I think that's well said and well evident in your history. So, anyway, to our listeners, we want to give you a chance to win one of our prizes, and it was a softball question this week. Where did Supervisor Gorin go to college? If you know the answer, call us at 707-565-2242, or email us at publicaffairs@sonoma-county.org and submit your answer, and we will put you in a drawing to win one of our prizes, and we'll give you a choice. Also, if you have comments about this or any other segment, or have a suggestion for a topic for a future SoCo Chat discussion, please email us at that same address, publicaffairs@sonoma-county.org. We would love to hear from you. Thank you all, and we hope you continue to follow SoCo Chat on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and of course, YouTube. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Susan.
And have a safe holiday season.
Thank you.